They say suburban life is tranquil, a pastel postcard of picket fences and predictable routines. But I know better. Beneath the manicured perfection lies a simmering tension, a yearning that could power a small city. I've spent 10 years building this fortress of self-sufficiency, hoping that emotional distance would breed contentment. Instead, it just bred a desperate ache for the weight of another person. It's the casual proximity that gets me. A shared laugh over burnt hot dogs, a brush against an elbow by the grill, and suddenly, I'm remembering what it feels like to be truly held. I'm not looking for a Hollywood romance, just a moment of genuine human contact, a hand on my back, an accidental graze that lingers too long. It's exhausting being this perpetually charged. I've become an expert in eavesdropping on the mundane dramas of my neighbors, the mortgage woes, the PTA meetings. But really, I'm just listening for a vulnerability, a crack in their polished facade that hints at shared desperation. We were supposed to be discussing gutter spouts, a purely practical matter. But the air thickened with unspoken weight, the kind of charged silence that only happens when two people are too close for comfort. When the streetlights hum that lonely, yellow song, the inhibitions drop like discarded gardening gloves. Suddenly, the stakes feel impossibly high, and the longing feels unbearable. It was an accident, a ladder leaning too far, a stumble on the wet patio stone. But when his hand stabilized me, that fleeting contact felt like a lightning strike across 10 years of emotional drought. We were talking about paint swatches, beige versus sage green, the banality of it all. But my mind was racing through scenarios far more vivid, imagining hands tracing lines on my arm instead of pointing out grout discoloration. We were discussing HOA fees, the ultimate suburban villainy. But the confined space, the low rumble of the engine, forced us into an intimacy that felt dangerously charged, a shared secret whispered between car seats. We sat on that creaky porch swing, talking about nothing and everything. And in the quiet rhythm of the chains, I felt the weight of his gaze, a look that saw past the perfect facade and straight into my desperate core. We were simply watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in those ridiculous, perfect suburban colors. But the shared silence was louder than any conversation, filled only with the ache of unfulfilled closeness. The rain started suddenly, trapping us under a flimsy awning. We were forced into an immediate, unavoidable proximity, a desperate closeness that made the longing feel less like a fantasy and more like an imminent reality. I realized then that my struggle wasn't against distance or time, it was against the sheer, suffocating proximity of ordinary life. And sometimes, the most dramatic confrontations happen over who gets to trim the overgrown hydrangea bush.